Well, to begin with, business strategist Dr. David Ofosu-Dorte is warning that confidence in the finance and banking sector could be hit badly in the coming months. That's if the domestic debt exchange program is not handled well by government. Mr. Dorte's fears are based on the current structure of the program and concerns being expressed by individual bondholders. He has been speaking on PM Express Business Edition.
I know very close friends and relatives who have essentially, based on collective investment scheme, mark to market alone, they've lost about 20% plus what was their principal as at the time this happened. And it's affected them drastically, right? So I think the individual component is the most painful one. But if I take that one aside and put that there, I think the lack of confidence in the financial sector is a very dangerous way that we are going. And it's not new. I've gone back on this in a previous presentation like this. Under the PNDC regime, if you had more than 50 CDs or something like that, you had a problem. People lost confidence in the financial sector, keeping monies at home, their mattresses, etc. Then, finally, after some 20 years or so, people get confidence. And then I make reference to the 2014, I think 2014, February. It was Valentine's Day, where we had some circular from Bank of Ghana where you basically could not hold dollar anymore, and a lot of people lost money. I lost money. We lost confidence. Then, just when we were about to regain it, the financial sector, a lot of Capital Bank, UT Bank, they all vanished, and we lose confidence again. And you have the banking financial institution, then the likes of NAM1, and all. It's been going on. Then just when we think the confidence is being restored, we have debt exchange. I have seen people who have bought safes and trying to keep money away from banks. So if we have a situation where people go after the banks, run on the banks, or another bank collapses, or people refuse to now send money to banks and stop saving, or save with other non-cash instruments like buy property, or send their money abroad by buying dollars, we will have killed confidence in the financial sector, and it will take a very long time to recover. For a country which wants to improve savings culture.
Business strategist and lawyer David Ofosu-Dorte there. Outgoing Minister for Trade and Industry, Alan Kyerematen, has revealed a $13 million strategic investment fund from the World Bank for the development of the Greater Kumasi Industrial City and Economic Zone project. It is in anticipation of a $150 million facility from the South Korean government for extension of the off-site industrial facilities. Mr. Kyerematen, who introduced leadership of the World Bank to the Asantehene in Kumasi, says the park, when completed, will be a game changer in the country's industrialization drive. Nanaya Ojima has more in the following report.
The Greater Kumasi Industrial Park is envisaged to be the prime manufacturing hub of the country. It sits on a 5,000-acre land at Ejoso in the Ashanti region. The facility will host different industrial parks within the city for the manufacturing of different products. Former Minister of Trade and Industry, Alan Kyerematen, explains the enclave will create job opportunities for the youth and improve the national economy.
And we know from the experience of the most advanced economies in the world that it's about creating industries. So we feel that when this project is fully executed, that it will contribute significantly to our job creation agenda in our country. So Your Royal Majesty, respectfully, will bring this to your attention, and hopefully that you take this as a personal challenge and drive this particular initiative.
With the initial investment made, the project is expected to attract private sector participation. It is believed the Africa Continental Free Trade Area will offer opportunities for participants to reach foreign markets.
Now the world is opening up. With the African Continental Free Trade Area, there are investors both within the country and outside the country who are seeing the opportunity that is offered by the AFCFTA to establish industrial enterprises in Ghana. We want this new industrial city and special economic zone to be the prime investment destination and the manufacturing hub for our country. And the plan is to have different industrial parks within the industrial city. So there's going to be an agro-industrial park which would concentrate on manufacturing of foods and beverages. There's going to be a garment village. There's going to be a pharmaceutical park and a biomedical center. There's going to be a new technology and innovation center trying to replicate what we have in the Silicon Valley. We're also going to have a mineral processing zone, an enclave. We have so much minerals that are mined in the Ashanti region.
Meanwhile, the World Bank has assured preparedness to help develop the country with focus on digitalization. Pierre Laporte is country director of the World Bank. For JoyNews, Nanaya Ojima, Kumasi.
Well, all week we've been taking a look at financial planning. Hope it has been helpful to you. Yesterday we spoke about planning finances in an austere environment on a broad level, including recommendations for individuals. So today, coming to your area of expertise, we will look at how businesses should approach planning finances in an austere macro environment. Pastor Melome is partner corporate transactions and investment banking at Bridgewater Advisors Limited. Great to have you one more time in the studio to talk about this. And so I want you to remind us of what the key considerations are for businesses in these times.
Well, let me say thank you for having me. But
my pleasure.
Looking at the times we are in currently, we all know the issue of inflation and its effect on cost being the core consideration currently. But then we also look at businesses trying to mobilize resources for operation, which brings together brings in the issue of capital raising as compared to the deployment of capital to make necessary returns. And this is really the headache of the day. For businesses also, exposed to foreign currency. We also know the CD dollar situation currently, and these are the core issues that businesses will have to deal with within the times that we are in.
Okay, I want to make reference to the debt exchange program. It was our top story this afternoon. What approach should businesses be adopting in designing the financial strategy in the midst of all the talk about debt exchange program?
Yeah, first and foremost, if you're a business exposed to this, definitely this will have some form of impact on your numbers here and there, your cash flows. You have to find a way to manage that. But that aside, you cannot ignore the macro environment. For every business currently, in terms of approach to financial planning or financial strategy, you have to look at the macro picture like a funnel, and then look at that relationship within the micro context of your business, and then factor that into your budgeting cycle. That is the first thing. The second part of it is to work within a more shorter planning time frame. Out of your main strategy, you have to factor in shorter time frames in order to consider changes in the environment. You can't just take the normal approach of being laid back, have an annual budget, run within that context. Now you have to be looking at the current movements on the market, particularly as it pertains to your business, to know how to respond.
So you've got to pay attention. Well, so what are the biggest threats to finances with the current business scenario that we find ourselves in?
The cost lines, generally, because of inflation. So you have escalating costs. It's difficult to plan within this type of environment. And then you also have the issue of the exchange situation. For corporate Ghana, I would say most offices, for example, within these commercial buildings, although we talk about the regulations insisting that businesses shouldn't price in dollars and all of that, you have corporate or commercial buildings pricing in the dollar. Okay, and so your forecast for rent, for example, will change rapidly. If you look at the movement in exchange. So these are the core points that businesses will have to look at when it comes to some of the financing issues.
And then how do you deal with these threats? Pay attention?
Yes, you have to pay attention to them in terms of, you could probably, like the rent situation, you could probably go sit back with your property managers, whoever it is, and come with some form of control mechanisms towards the exposures.
Any other threats that come to mind?
Oh, well, these are the core, they have a ripple effect on many things. Obviously, when it comes to, let's say, mobilization of resources for operation, I spoke about capital raising. You have funds, even in the public or the private markets, slowing down in terms of how to engage or go on transactions. So deal closures and all of those things are kind of slow at the moment. So these are some of the ripple effects. The exchange situation plus inflation situation, for example, is making it very difficult for businesses to justify numbers to investors, for example. So you could go with a model today that generates a return on maybe say 24%. Tomorrow is 16%. So these are some of the ripple effects because of these crucial issues.
Well, I know many businesses end the year running at a loss. And so in planning for this year, you have to consider the losses that you made in the previous year. How do you sort of juggle those two and ensure that at the end of the year, you're still at a place where you are profitable, if not breaking even?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, when you look at a business, it's either you find ways to increase your revenue, right? Or you have to bring down your costs. So if operations last year went at a loss, coming into this year, you have to clearly figure out ways of cutting down, trimming down your operations. Finding creative ways to do that, bringing down the cost. If you have revenue lines you can sustain, you keep that, or if you have opportunities to explore, expanding your revenue streams, that's a good way to go.
All right, let's look at this year, and I want you to look into the magic ball. Let's forecast. Okay. What your expectations are of the corporate finance landscape this year?
Yeah, the corporate finance landscape is going to be a tough one for most of the year. I'll start off by looking at the mergers and acquisition space, which is a primary mechanism by which businesses explore expansion. There are a number of external players or cross-border M&A transactions happening across the continent. Coming into Ghana, I think players would be a bit slow in doing transactions within our space. And then when it comes to raising capital, I also see a slowdown, at least for, let's say, half the year until we have finality to the IMF situation, which I believe will change market sentiment. Until then, there's going to be some form of a slowdown in terms of deal making.
Okay. I know some of the concerns, especially when it comes to the state of our economy and the policy rate hikes and all of that, is accessing credit. And so for businesses that are seeking to access credit, it's going to be pretty hard. So how do you deal with that challenge if you're looking to access some credits from the banks and you are facing challenges? You need to raise money to manage your business.
Yes. Well, so the one thing is to consider alternatives. There are other alternatives to funding. The banks are the primary source for most businesses because most of them are active in the market with the businesses, so they have a better understanding of business models and how it works. But that aside, when the going gets tough for businesses, there's the consideration for other options. We have the private equity landscape that exists in Ghana. We have the venture capital landscape that could also be considered. Although these options may, in some circumstances, be considered as more difficult options, they are still something to consider because it's better to go getting something done than nothing. So aside the bank financing being traditional, there are other options to consider. I would say that this is not a practical solution to the SME groups, for example, that may not be as attractive to a typical private equity fund. However, one has to put some mechanisms in place, and I think alternatives provide an answer.
You made reference to losses in the previous year.
Yes.
And so, it's bad enough that you've made a loss in the previous year, but you want to avoid making a loss in this year as well. And so what strategy can businesses adopt, for instance? Okay,
so you have to carefully review your cost lines. There are various elements of cost. We have the major blocks. I mentioned rent earlier, depending on the type of operations you have. You also have the staff cost and other huge chunks. You have to look at these lines and see how best to structure them in order to contain the pressures in the external environment. So that's a sure way to go. Okay,
I'm looking at the notes from my producer. He makes reference to losses or huge losses. And so making a loss is inevitable during this year based on the challenges we are facing?
Oh, not necessarily. In every situation, some businesses win as well.
Okay.
So it's not a loss for everybody per se. I mean, COVID also gave opportunities to some other businesses. But I mean, when you are talking about huge losses and its implications, we need to look at how losses are absorbed. So when a business gets into huge deficits, it eats into capital, right? So there has to be a way to recover from this, either by quickly working on your revenue mechanisms or injecting more capital into the business. And to make that injection sustainable, the whole model sustainable, you have to review your cost lines.
Okay, we have 1 minute, and I love to do this for you to address our audience, give them something to ponder over or think about as they prepare for the next week or the coming months.
Sure. So it's a difficult time for businesses, it's clear, but I have to say that it is just for a certain period. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that once we get some of the macro things out of the way, for example, the debt exchange program situation, and then we have the... It
doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon.
Well, it's going to go. It's going to go one day. So it's going to go away, and then we can look at the approvals from IMF to conclude that whole process. Once that is done, I think the sentiments on the market are going to change. There's going to be confidence, and then business will gradually begin to get back to normal. So it's not all doom, but in the interim, it's scary. That's what I would say.
All right. On that optimistic note, I want to thank you once again, Mr. Melomith, Possible Melomith, for gracing our studios and bringing us those tips. Hopefully, we'll see you some days to come. I'm sure, probably. Yeah. Thank you for your time. Now, access to healthcare in South Africa will now be easier and faster with the introduction of Meditor Travel and Hospitality Services. The breadth of this medical service will afford patients in Ghana timely quality healthcare to South Africa without any stress. Now, speaking at the launch of the Meditor Travel and Hospitality Services, South Africa's High Commissioner to Ghana, Grace Mason, said this initiative will boost the medical tourism between both countries. Here's more in this report.
Meditor Travel and Hospitality is an innovative package that will ensure patients seeking healthcare in South Africa do so at ease without any stress. The initiative, which is championed by the South African Embassy and the Ghana South Africa Business Chamber, will enable patients receive thorough medical checkups from specialist doctors at a lesser cost compared to other advanced countries. Russell Bamfo is the Managing Director of Meditor Travel and Hospitality and has been highlighting the significance of this initiative.
Essentially, what we're trying to do is to encourage people to stay healthy, okay? And therefore, like I did say, for every country organization, its most valuable asset is a human resource. Okay, so indeed, if a lot of more people are staying healthy, it means that our productivity levels will be up, we'll be more efficient, we'll be more productive, and it's at the end of the day, to the large extent, help our economies.
South Africa's High Commissioner to Ghana, Her Excellency Grace Mason Janet, urged everyone to take advantage of this package as it would boost the medical tourism of Ghana and South Africa.
We are in an era and we're still grappling with the after effects of the global pandemic and the economic situations, and for us we leverage on the opportunity and the creativeness of getting tourism and getting the movement of people between our respective nations. And as South African, the South African High Commission, at the apex of our agenda is to consolidate and to strengthen South-South cooperation, and this bilateral agreement is basically what we are here to do, is to strengthen areas of cooperation, and tourism is one of the low-hanging fruits that we can leverage with the movement of people. And as you come and do your medical tourism, you come to South Africa to come and do your medicals, and you get an opportunity of also exploring the country. Come to all 9 provinces of South Africa.
The medical trip to South Africa will be in February and October this year.
Some interesting stuff then. That's the marketplace. Thanks for watching, everyone. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. More news on bondholders to lose 82.2% of investments at current inflation rate. myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Daryl Kwawu. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.